It's strange how life can twist irony into art. I built this company with my own hands, signed every check, designed every office corner. Yet that morning, as I stepped through the glass doors of my own headquarters, a woman with a clipboard and a tight smile told me I didn't belong there. Her name was Karen Walker, head of the neighborhood's HOA board, and apparently, the newly appointed community liaison for corporate tenants. The irony. My company owned the entire building. I was dressed casually that day, dark jeans, a gray sweatshirt, and an old cap my father gave me. No security escort. No limousine. Just me. I wanted to feel invisible again, to remember what it was like before money changed everything. But she didn't just see me as invisible. She saw me as unworthy. "Excuse me, sir," she said sharply. "You can't be in here. This is a private property. Tenants only." Her tone carried that sharp edge I knew too well. Not the kind that defends order, but the kind that defends ego. I turned to her slowly. "I'm a tenant," I replied calmly. Karen crossed her arms. "You're not on the list. I know everyone who works here." Security guard appeared beside her, and she gestured toward me like I was a stray dog that wandered in. "Please escort him out." For a moment I wanted to laugh, but I didn't. I wanted to see how far she'd go. "Are you sure you know everyone?" I asked quietly. "I do," she said, chin lifted, as if that proved something. "And I've never seen you." Her confidence was astounding, but underneath it, I saw what I'd seen in hundreds of people. Before the assumption that a man like me couldn't possibly belong where marble floors and gold elevators existed, so I played along. I allowed the guard to walk beside me to the lobby door. Karen's eyes stayed glued on me like she was guarding her castle. That's when I said, softly but clearly, "Tell your board to check the deed. My name's on it." The security guard froze. Karen frowned, half confused, half annoyed. "What are you talking about?" I leaned closer, just enough for her to hear. "I'm the one who signs your paycheck." And then I walked out. Outside, the air felt colder. My reflection in the glass doors stared back at Mia, man the world forgot to look twice at, till he held power in silence. I didn't go home that day. Instead, I sat in my car across the street, watching her strut around the lobby like she ruled it. And something inside me clicked. I wasn't angry. Not yet, I was. Curious how many others had she treated that way. How many people had walked away humiliated because someone like her decided they weren't enough. I remembered the janitor, old Mr. Lewis, who once told me she'd complained about his attitude for whistling while he cleaned. I remembered the delivery driver she made cry over a package left on the wrong floor. That's when I realized this wasn't just about me. It was about power. The kind people think they earn by belittling others, and I was going to take it away from her, quietly, completely. But before that, I needed to remind myself why I built this empire. That night, I drove to the old part of town, to the neighborhood where everything began. The lights flickered. The streets smelled of gasoline and old bread. My mother's bakery was gone, now turned into a convenience store with no soul. I sat there in silence, remembering her words the night before she passed. "Son, never let them tell you where you belong. You build your own place, and you walk into it with your head high." That voice echoed in me. So the next morning, I woke up early and drove back to my company, not as the billionaire, but as the boy who once believed in fairness. I walked past the same front desk. The same marble. The same Karen. She saw me, again her eyes narrowed. "You again?" "Yes," I said, smiling faintly. Before she could call security, another voice echoed from behind her. "Mr. Grant, you're here early." It was Alan, my coup. He hurried over, shaking my hand firmly. Karen's jaw fell open. "Mr. Grant?" She repeated. Alan laughed, oblivious. "Of course. The man who built this place. What brings you down to the lobby?" I looked straight at Karen. "Just wanted to check how things are being managed down here." Her face drained of color. Alan turned to her, confused. "Oh, you've met our owner. This is Mr. Jordan Grant, founder of Grant Industries." Karen's lips trembled as she stuttered. I didn't realize." I cut her off gently. "You didn't need to realize. You just needed to show respect." Alan frowned, sensing tension. I waved it off and told him I'd take care of it. Karen stood frozen as I walked toward her desk. The clipboard that once symbolized control now looked like a shield she couldn't hide behind. I placed my hand on the counter and leaned in. "You like power, don't you, Karen?" She blinked rapidly. I just enforce the rules." "No," I said softly. "You enjoy them. You use them." I let the silence stretch, heavy and uncomfortable. "You see people and decide if they belong based on what? Their clothes? Their skin? Their silence?" Her eyes welled up, but I didn't stop. "You forgot something important, Karen. This company doesn't exist to make you feel powerful. It exists to make people feel seen, I walked away. But this wasn't revenge. Not yet. Because while she looked humiliated, I knew it wouldn't last. People like her recover quickly. They find new ways to twist the story to make themselves the victim. No, what I had planned was something colder. Something that would make her face the truth every single day. And for that, I'd need help. Later that evening, I called in Maya, head of internal HR. Sharp, fair, and fearless. She'd been with me since year one. Maya, I said, I want you to run an internal audit on community complaints. Is anything specific? She asked. Yes, I said slowly. Start with the HOA liaison. Karen Walker. Maya paused, her tone turning cautious. You mean the one who, yes? Within hours, reports started coming in? Anonymous complaints. Staff members describing her behavior. Tenants feeling bullied. Patterns of prejudice hidden behind bureaucratic language. And there it was, the full picture. But I didn't fire her. Not yet. Instead, I called a company-wide meeting. A big one. Every tenant, board member, and manager invited. Even Karen, she came in nervous, glancing at me every few seconds. Probably hoping I'd forgotten the incident. I didn't. As everyone gathered, I took the stage. We're here today, I began to talk about leadership. About what it really means to hold power. I didn't name her. Not yet. I let the weight of the words hang. Power isn't about control, I continued. It's about character. About how you treat people when you think no one's watching. And then, as if fate had written the moment, I called Karen up to the stage. The room went silent. She walked slowly, clutching her clipboard like a lifeline. This, I said, is Karen Walker. She represents the HOA that manages our building's community standards. Nervous laughter filled the air. I turned to her. Karen, would you tell us what you think power means? Her mouth opened, but no words came. Just silence. So I answered for her. It means responsibility. It means kindness. It means understanding that the person you look down on might be the very one who built the floor you're standing on. Applause erupted, but I didn't feel triumph. I felt something deeper. Because revenge, when done right, isn't loud. It's quiet. It's when truth becomes the weapon. And for the first time, I saw her eyes softened. Not out of shame, but realization. That was the beginning. But the story was far from over. Because as I would soon learn, Karen wasn't done fighting. And her next move would test everything I stood for. The next morning, I walked back into my building, the same place I had been thrown out of less than 24 hours before. Only this time, I wasn't here for confrontation. I was here to observe. Karen was at the front desk again, whispering to another board member. Her posture screamed confidence, but her eyes flickered nervously every few seconds. I could tell she was pretending nothing had happened. I didn't speak to her. I didn't even look her way. I simply passed by with Alan and the executive team. My silence was louder than any argument. But what Karen didn't know was that I'd already started something behind the scenes, something she couldn't see coming. For the next week, I let her live in uncertainty. She saw me pass by occasionally, always quiet, always polite. And every time I did, I saw her flinch. Not because she feared losing her job, but because she couldn't read me anymore. That's what terrified her most. People like Karen feed on predictability. They control others by knowing how to provoke them. When you take that away, when you take away their power to make you react, start to fall apart. I had Maya continue her quiet audit. Every complaint, every witness statement, every moment someone had been made to feel small by that woman, it was all being gathered, verified, and documented. But the goal wasn't just to expose her. That would be too easy. To public, I wanted her to face what she'd done privately, painfully and permanently. A week later, Maya came into my office with a thick folder. She's been doing this for years, she said, voice low but steady. Selective enforcement, intimidation, targeting certain tenants, even small businesses. I flipped through the pages. The patterns were undeniable. But one file caught my attention, a small coffee shop on the corner of our property, owned by a woman named Alina Ruiz. Karen had fined her 3 times for unauthorized decorations. The decorations? A chalkboard with positive quotes for customers. I closed the file. Maya, get Alina on the phone. Tell her I want to visit her shop. When I walked into Elena's cafe that afternoon, she nearly dropped her tray. Mr. Grant, what brings you here? Just coffee, I said with a smile. Her shop smelled of cinnamon and vanilla, soft music playing in the background. It felt real, the kind of place people built out of love, not greed. After a few minutes of conversation, she finally said, I know why you're really here. It's because of Karen, isn't it? I nodded slightly. She sighed. She's made my life miserable. Every week there's some new rule, some new inspection. I've thought about closing this place so many times, but I can't. It's all I have. That moment stuck with me. Because for the first time, I realized Karen's cruelty wasn't random, it was systemic. She targeted people she thought were powerless, and that made my decision final. The next morning, I called for a meeting, but not just any meeting. I wanted every small business owner, tenant, an employee affected by the HOA's control to attend. Karen got the notice too, when she saw the agenda. Community Standards Review Session. She probably thought it was her chance to shine again. To remind everyone, she was in charge. She couldn't have been more wrong. The conference room buzzed with quiet tension. Dozens of faces, some tired, some angry, some curious. Karen stood near the front, shuffling her notes. Clearly rehearsed for a speech no one had asked her to give, I stood at the back. Unnoticed at first. Good morning, everyone, she began in that sugary tone of hers. As you know, we at the HOA take pride in maintaining order and excellence across our property's order. A voice interrupted. It was Alina. You mean control? Karen's face stiffened. Excuse me? You find half the businesses here for nonsense, Alina said, standing up. You find me for a chalkboard? You find John's Deli for a flag. You find the daycare for a painted mural that kids made. You're not protecting the community. You're suffocating it. The room erupted in murmurs. Karen tried to recover. Ma'am, there are standards to uphold. If we let everyone do whatever they want, we'll lose our eye. Stepped forward then, my voice cutting through the noise. Our humanity. Every head turn, Karen froze. Mr. Grant. I smiled calmly. You were saying, she faltered. I was explaining. No, you were justifying, I said, walking toward her slowly. There's a difference. The silence that followed was thick enough to touch. I looked around the room, meeting every eye. You all know me as the owner of Grant Industries? But what you don't know is that I started where most of you are now, being told I wasn't enough, that I didn't belong. I turned to Karen, and people like her made me fight harder. That's why I built this place, to give people the freedom I once wished I had. Karen looked down. But I wasn't finished. This building, this company, this community, it's supposed to be a place where people grow. Not where they're crushed under policies written in arrogance. Applause broke out. Not the forced kind, the kind that comes from pain finally being heard. Karen's eyes glistened. For a brief moment, I almost pitied her. Almost. When the applause faded, I said quietly, Karen Walker, effective immediately, you are relieved of your duties as liaison. But before you go, you will personally apologize to every person you've wronged in this room. Her breath hitched. I can't. Yes, you can, I said, stepping closer. And you will. She hesitated, then slowly turned to Alina. I'm sorry, she whispered. Alina didn't reply. Then she turned to the next person, and the next. Each apology seemed to chip away at her pride until there was nothing left but the truth. When she finally looked back at me, her eyes were red. Is this what you wanted? To humiliate me? I shook my head. No, I wanted you to understand. Humiliation is what you gave others. This is accountability. After the meeting, I walked out into the courtyard alone. The sunlight hit the glass walls, scattering reflections all around me. For the first time in days, I felt a quiet kind of peace. But as I was leaving, Maya rushed over. Jordan, she said urgently. You need to see this. She handed me her phone. It was a social media post, Karen, standing in front of the building, crying to a local news crew. The headline read, HOA board member claims discrimination. After Billionaire's public firing, and there it was, the next move, she wasn't done. She was turning the narrative in her mind. She wasn't the villain anymore. She was the victim. I stared at the screen, feeling that quiet fire rise again. So this was how she wanted to play. Fine, the game had just changed, and this time, I wouldn't play fair. When the headlines hit, they spread like wildfire. HOA member fired after discrimination claims. Local woman says Billionaire humiliated her for doing her job. Within hours, every news outlet had picked it up. I watched it all unfold from my office window. The city skyline flickering like static behind the chaos. I'd expected this Karen wasn't the kind to accept consequences quietly. But the speed of her retaliation, that surprised me. What she didn't know was that every lie she told was building her own trap. By noon, my PR team was in panic mode. Jordan, you have to respond, my head of communications said. The public's already taking sides. Let them, I replied calmly. He looked stunned. Sir, if you don't make a statement, I said let them, I repeated. We don't fight storms. We wait for the clouds to show their cracks. He didn't understand yet. But he would, because I knew something no one else did. Karen's lies couldn't stand up to truth. And truth has a funny way of surfacing when you stop trying to bury it. That evening, sat in my car in the company parking lot, scrolling through social media. Karen had become an overnight symbol of workplace injustice. She'd posted a teary video, shaky voice, trembling hands, pretending to be the victim of corporate bullying. Had over 200,000 views, she called me. Arrogant, disrespectful, even accused me of using my wealth to silence a woman just doing her job. The comment section was on fire. Some called her brave. Others called me cruel, and right in the middle of it, I saw a post from an old employee of mine, funny. She once made me cry for being 5 minutes late to work after my daughter's surgery. Karma's catching up. That's when I realized her mask was cracking, and people were starting to talk. The next morning, I gathered my executive team. Alan, Maya, and my lawyer Christopher sat across the table. Alan spoke first. She's rallying public support. The HOA board is backing her now. They're even talking about suing for wrongful termination. Christopher frowned. We can fight it. But it'll be ugly. I leaned back in my chair. Ugly is fine. Truth isn't supposed to be pretty. And I turned to Maya. What about the audit? She handed me another folder, thicker than before. You were right to wait. She's been falsifying inspection reports, taking bribes from select tenants, even threatening businesses that refuse to pay compliance fees. I felt my chest tighten, not with anger, but with clarity. She used fear as a business model, I said quietly. Maya nodded. And now she's using sympathy the same way. I smiled faintly. Then it's time we changed the narrative. We launched our move 3 days later, not a counterattack, but a revelation. I didn't release a statement. I released stories. We contacted every small business, every tenant, every worker she'd hurt. We helped them record their testimonies, calm, honest, real. No anger, no shouting, just truth. Elena's video was the first to go up. She'll find me for letting kids draw chalk art outside my shop. Said it made the building look unprofessional. But those kids, they were customers. They were community. Then came Mr. Lewis, the janitor. She told me I smiled too much while working. Said it was unprofessional. I smile because I'm grateful to be alive. Guess she didn't like that? Each story spread like light breaking through storm clouds. By the end of the week, the public sentiment flipped. The comments that once defended Karen now questioned her. The same reporters who wrote glowing headlines now wanted interviews with the victims. And still, I stayed silent. Because revenge, real revenge, doesn't scream. It waits. One night, as I was leaving the office, my phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. Hello? Mr. Grant, the voice said shakily. It's Karen. I paused. What do you want? There was silence on the other end. Then a soft sob. I didn't mean for it to get this far. The board, they're threatening to remove me. I just wanted my job back. Her voice cracked, the arrogance gone. You wanted power? I said flatly. Now you have attention. How does it feel? Please, she whispered. Can we talk privately? I didn't respond. I hung up because there's a point where forgiveness becomes permission, and I wasn't giving her that anymore. 2 days later, the board held an emergency session. They invited me to attend. I didn't have to, but I wanted to look them in the eye when the truth finally surfaced. Karen sat at the far end of the table, all pale and tired. Gone was the crisp uniform and confident smirk. She looked smaller somehow, like the world had finally stopped revolving around her. The chairman cleared his throat. Mr. Grant, we've reviewed your team's report. The evidence is overwhelming. He looked at Karen, who kept her gaze down. Ms. Walker, do you deny these allegations? Her voice was barely audible. No, sir. Silence fell. The chairman sighed. You've misused authority, falsified documents, and damaged this community's integrity. Effective immediately, you are permanently removed from the HOA board. Karen's breath caught. Please. I can fix it. You've done enough, the chairman said coldly. I stood up, ready to leave. But as I reached the door, she called out, Jordan! I turned slowly. Her eyes were red, but her tone was defiant again. You think you've won? But you haven't. You'll always be the man they whisper about. The outsider pretending to belong? I took a step closer, my voice calm but sharp as glass. No, Karen. I stopped pretending the day you tried to throw me out of my own company. I don't need their approval. I built my own place to belong. Her lip trembled, but I didn't wait for her reply. I walked out as the room erupted into whispers. Later that night, I found myself driving again, not home, not to celebrate, but back to that same quiet neighborhood where my mother's bakery used to be. The wind was soft, carrying the scent of rain and dust. I parked near the old lot, sat in silence, let the memories wash over me. Her words echoed once more in my mind. You build your own place. You walk into it with your head high. That's when I realized. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming something deeper, dignity. Because sometimes, the greatest justice isn't in destroying your enemies. It's in forcing them to face the reflection they tried to give you. And as the streetlights flickered above, I finally felt peace. but I didn't know. Another storm was already forming, because while Karen's power had ended here, her story wasn't over yet. There was silence on the other end. Then, a trembling breath. "I didn't know," she said. "I didn't know who you were. If I had, I'd cut her off." "That's the problem, Karen. You treat people based on who you think they are." Another pause. Then softer. "They've all turned against me. The board, the press. I lost everything." Her voice cracked. "I have kids. A mortgage. Please, can we talk?" For a long moment I said nothing. I could have hung up. I could have told her it was karma, justice, whatever word people use to make revenge feel righteous. But instead I said, "Karen, I didn't ruin you. You did that all by yourself." And then I hung up. The next morning I woke up before dawn. My penthouse overlooked the city skyscrapers glowing gold under the rising sun. I thought of the journey, the humiliation, the anger, the restraint. Every piece of it had led to this quiet moment. That day, I wasn't thinking about revenge anymore. I was thinking about reflection. Because somewhere in the mess, I realized this wasn't about proving power. It was about showing what power should look like. I grabbed my phone and called Alina. "Let's host a community event," I said. "Free booths for small businesses, music, art, the works. Let's rebuild what she tried to tear apart." Lena was silent for a second. Then she said softly, "You're turning her hate into healing." I smiled. Exactly. 2 weeks later, the plaza was alive again. Children were drawing chalk rainbows on the sidewalk. Couples danced to jazz music. Local shops gave out free samples, and the laughter that had once vanished from this place had returned tenfold. As I walked through the crowd, people nodded and smiled. Some clapped. Others just said thank you. And in that moment, I realized something important. Forgiveness isn't weakness, it's ownership. Not of others, but of yourself. A few days later, I got an envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside a handwritten note, "I'm sorry, I really am. I've started therapy. I'm trying to change. Thank you for not destroying me when you could have. K." I read it twice, then placed it in my desk drawer, not out of pity, but closure. People like her don't need public defeat. They need private reflection. And if I'd screamed louder, if I'd gloated, she never would have listened. But silence it makes people hear their own echoes. Months passed, my company thrived. The community flourished. And my name, once trending in controversy, became a quiet symbol of integrity. Reporters called it the softest revenge in corporate history. But I didn't see it that way. It wasn't revenge, it was revelation. One evening while driving through the old neighborhood, I stopped at the security gate where it all began. The same neighborhood where Karen once told me I didn't belong. The new guard waved and smiled. "Good evening, Mr. Grant. Welcome home." I parked near the lake, watching the reflection of the houses ripple in the water. The air was still, the sky a deep orange fading into violet. I thought of that first day, how angry I'd been, how small she tried to make me feel. And how, in the end, I didn't need to fight her to win. Gosh, just needed to stay me. Because that's what true power is. When you don't have to shout to be heard. I turned to the camera in my mind, the one that had been following me through this entire story, and spoke to you, viewer. If someone tries to strip you of your worth, don't give them the satisfaction of seeing you break. Let them drown in their own noise. Stay patient. Stay kind. And when your time comes, shine so bright, they have no choice but to see what they tried to ignore. Then I smiled, because the best revenge isn't destruction, it's peace. And as the music swelled and the scene faded to black, I said one last thing. If this story moved you, don't just click away. Share it. Let someone else remember that no matter who tries to put them down, their value isn't up for debate. So watch till the end, and live like the ending matters.